What is going on, Pirate Nation? Welcome into Jungle Tales, episode 4 of the program. Tonight, we are joined, as you see there on the screen, by former East Carolina outfielder and DH, Chandler Jenkins. Chandler, we appreciate your time. Welcome in.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. Love the intro, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. Appreciate you joining tonight. Definitely wanted to have you on, period. But the reason I wanted to have you on in such a timely fashion, here within the last week or two, we saw the news that Sean Jenkins, like we were just discussing off the air, part of what appeared to be the class of 2025, opted to reclassify. You see it a lot of times in football where guys enter mid-year, but very rarely, from what I recall, do you see a guy that just totally skips his senior year of high school, reclassifies, and then makes that decision to enter college a year early. But it's great for the Pirates because you're getting a guy that can run it up there into the mid 90s consistently in what pitches 91 to 93.
Yeah. Sean's a stud, man. So this is gonna be a big comparison, and hopefully people don't write me off when I say this, but he reminds me a lot of Gavin when Gavin Williams came into ECU. Just now, obviously, he's not as tall as Gavin, still pretty tall, but just big body and just can let it go. And they both had, that power breaking ball. He reminds me a little bit of Trey Benton as well with the power breaking ball, but there's a high ceiling there for Sean. And like you said, you don't see many guys jump jump a whole grade to go into college. You see it in high school all the time, the whole reclassifying, but you don't really see it in baseball with college. And but Sean's a guy who I don't think it's premature. Like I think he'll do just fine because sometimes you might worry some guys like did they maybe jump too quick? But when you're sitting 93, 94, 95, and with a wipeout slider, you're going to get you're going to get guys out at that level. It's going to play.
Right. And you talk about that excellent stuff. It may be a situation, where, and I don't know who knows where he was going to be projected next year, but if this doesn't happen, he may or may not make it to campus.
That's also true. Yeah, because which we've had plenty of conversations, me and the staff over at the facility at Athletes Lab where Sean plays, and we've had that conversation. We're like, man, like, what if he would have waited another year? Like, would that opportunity have been there? Or what if he goes down to a Georgia or a Florida, this summer and fall, puts up those numbers, and next thing you know, what if he's in a All American game and then that draft stock just takes off? But like you said, it's good for the Pirates that they're getting him before he had the opportunity to do those kind of things because as long as he stays healthy and and his stuff continues to improve and he gets adjusted to that level, he's definitely got the potential to be a draft prospect.
Now, for full transparency here, you don't coach Sean, but you are at Athletes Lab, the facility that he trains at, and he's a major part of. And just tell Pirate Nation your background. How you came to know Sean Jenkins. Besides Athletes Lab, and just everything you can about him that Pirate fans will be interested in.
Yeah, so with Sean, so yeah, I met him at Athletes Lab. He attended Fred T. Ford High School, which isn't too far away from where I went to high school and where the facility is. And just I was in there every week, and I saw Sean would come in, and I knew he pitched, but I was only seeing him on the hitting side, just with the stuff that I was doing, and then I was getting word how good he was. Well, then my brother, not Sean, my brother came to Athletes Lab, and him and Sean were on the same team. So on the weekends, I wasn't coaching. Whenever I was able to go watch my brother play, usually Sean would be throwing, so I got to spend a lot of time with Sean in the dugout, and then just watching him pitch in person. So I've gotten to know Sean pretty well. He's a great kid, really good personality. One thing that really sets him apart from other people is he does a really good job. I'm gonna steal one of Coach Godwin's quotes here. He does a really good job of ignoring the noise. I know we've all heard that a ton. He does
Yeah,
a really good job with
just
it.
a time or two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he does a really good job of that. He doesn't like it. Actually bothers him a little bit whenever some of the hype comes around him because he just wants to put his nose down and he just wants to go to work. So he's going to fit in just fine, especially with his personality, and him and Coach G. They'll mesh with no problem.
And there you see on the screen for our viewers, Sean Jenkins stuff that Chandler was referencing: fastball 93 to 94, curveball 80 to 83, and then 83 to 84 um, on
Yeah,
that.
and that splitter is pretty gross too.
Yeah, yeah,
It tumbles.
on that splitter. So
Yeah,
and then so this is something, if you follow us on social media at Jungle Tales Pod, you can certainly find that, or as you see there, Prep Baseball NC, Prep Baseball Report does a good job, and you can check that out and see some video. And I know there's also video that we retweeted within the last week or two, when that news broke about the reclassification of Sean Jenkins, and we found out that he was going to be at East Carolina this fall. You saw some of the videos that were posted on X earlier this spring. A game, for instance, a 7-inning game where he struck out 17.
yeah, yeah. That's the kind of stuff he has, and of course, the hitters definitely get better in the college level, but high spin rate guy. It's got some ride on it, and he tunnels it really well. So his fastball and that curveball, they tunnel really well. So he gets a lot of swing and miss. It's funny. So we scrimmaged them I'm at Maiden High School, so we scrimmaged them at the start of our season this past year, and we got shown for 2 innings. And told our guys, so guys, we're sitting on one pitch. I said, that's the heater. If he gets you with anything else, so be it. I was like, because if you can sit on it all you want, you're not going to touch it. So just sell out to the heater, and we'll work with what we have. And as far as our leadoff guy, he turned around a fastball, which was also one of his showcase teammates. So they had a good laugh about that. But then, like I said, he just we were able to run the pitch count up some because he's supposed to go 3 innings, so we got him out in 2. But he still has that put away stuff. I think the Pirates are really going to like what they're getting in Sean. And, with even if they weren't losing some arms that we've heard with the transfer portal, as long as he stays healthy and, he proves when he gets there, I think he has a good shot of seeing some time somewhere as a freshman.
You talk about him being from Fred T. Ford High School. At Ford High School, he had a teammate, Braxton Trammell, who's also going to be a Pirate. So tell us what you can about Braxton.
Yeah, Braxton, he's a dude. I've gotten to know Braxton really well because Braxton, I believe, had been committed since he was a sophomore. So he was already committed by the time I made it over to Athletes Lab, and just he had found out I played at ECU. So from day one, we were already talking about what he's going to look forward to when he gets there, what to expect. Within the first few months, we were already talking about the hit routine that we do at ECU, and oddly enough, whenever he was up there this summer with the incoming class, they're still doing that hit routine. And funny story, he pretty much knew how to do most of it. So Thomas Francisco looked at him. He's like, "How do you know how to do this?" And he told him, he's like, "Oh, okay, well that makes sense." So I've been able to get to know Brax really well. Really good hitter, hits from both sides. He's jacked out of his mind. That dude moves some weight in the weight room. He doesn't look like your typical freshman. And I know I've said that twice, but Braxton has the build. He's going to be a special player.
Tell us about that comparison that I know you mentioned it off the air, to a Pirate that obviously did unbelievable things, especially in that senior season, kind of put it all together.
Yeah, so he reminds me a lot of Bryson Worrell. Big build. Bryson's a little bit faster. Like, you're not going to see Braxton play in center field, but really big build. They hit from both sides of the plate and have insane pop from both sides of the plate. Like I said, we were talking. I used to call Bryson Hercules because of how shredded he was, even as a freshman, right? And I got to spend 2 years with Bryson, which was a lot of fun. And being in the outfield, I was with him every day. But yeah, Braxton reminds me a lot of him, just the way they move, the way they play. Braxton is kind of a nose down and go guy. Doesn't say a whole lot. Pretty stoic individual. I don't think I've ever seen him get frustrated. I'm sure he does, as everybody does, but he's a pretty stoic individual, and he reminded me a lot of Bryson. And as Braxton develops, I think you could see. Obviously, Bryson is a top tier guy at ECU and what he's doing now, but I think you're going to see flashes of what Bryson did with Braxton. And Braxton has a different sound when it comes off the bat.
Yeah, not to get off on a tangent here, but you bring up Bryson Wool like that, and I think about that tear that he went on late in that 2022 season.
Yeah,
I guess that game against Coppin State, the first game of the Greenville Regional, he homered in the same inning from each side of the
both sides of
plate.
the plate. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I try my best to not miss a game, but I definitely don't miss regional games and super regional games. And I was just like, and which I knew he could do it, but I was just like, even now, as like someone who wasn't playing anymore, I was still getting hyped up like I was in the dugout. Like it was incredible.
and
Which
then meanwhile,
was
like you, sorry, go ahead.
Jake Washer did something very similar too in our 2019
Oh yeah,
regional. He went
yeah,
like 5 at bats in a row with a homer or something. It was insane. There was like
yeah.
3 times where I was hitting after him in those games. I was like, how do I follow this up?
Yeah, Wash went on an unbelievable tear, and had hoped to see him play recently. Went to watch the High Point Rockers. Unfortunately, Wash was not in the lineup that night. And I know he made it up as high as AAA with the Cubs organization with
Yeah,
Iowa. So hopefully Wash will get another shot in minor league. Well, he's playing professional baseball, but in minor league baseball,
yeah, for sure.
there with an affiliated team. But kind of transitioning over now to your Pirates story. You played for East Carolina in 2018 and 2019. But before we dive into your time with ECU and how you got to East Carolina, just you grew up in the western part of the state, um, and then you played at West Lincoln High School, and there's a lot of good baseball in Lincoln County. Down through the years, Alec Burleson was a Lincoln County kid, and so
Yep.
was Lane. So was Lane Hoover.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, from the western side of Lincoln County. So I got to play against Alec when he was a freshman. So my senior year of high school, East Lincoln was still in our conference. Alec was a freshman, and I got a story about that. So we were playing him at West Lincoln, and in right field at the fence, there was like a small hole, or there used to be. They've redone the fence since then. So I hit a ball off the wall in right field, and Alec, when he went to pick it up, his foot went underneath it, and he fractured his ankle. But so here's Alec Burleson though, plays the whole game, pitches like 2 days later and struck out like 16 on a fractured ankle. So you're right. So like Alec's been a stud ever since I've known him, and of course after that game he pitched, he ended up getting his ankle checked out. But still, as you're a 15-year-old pitching on a fractured ankle and just mowing dudes down is pretty impressive. But yeah, I got to play against Alec. So I didn't get to play against Lane. Um, I was actually out of there before Lane got there. But the reason we got to play together at ECU is because I redshirted at CVCC. But I did play against Lane's older brother, Jacob Hoover. So I've known the Hoovers for a while, and some of my friends are relatives with the Hoovers. So I've known them for a while. But yeah, there was a lot of good baseball. Did I freeze up on you?
You did, but I can still hear you. Okay,
Okay. Sorry about that. My
no
Wi-Fi
problem.
messed us up. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of good baseball out here, and I'm glad to see that it's growing even more. Like I know, just between the guys going to ECU in the last several years, you had me, Lane, Alec. Now you're getting Braxton and Sean. You had Isaac Armstrong. He went to East Lincoln as well.
Right.
So you're looking at 6, 7 guys in the last 5 years that are finally starting to make their way out there. So I'm really glad to see that that people are starting to see the talent that's over here, because there's been a lot of really good talent for a really long time, and there still is.
Yeah, no doubt. And I remember back, I guess, close to 20 years ago now. I guess '07, '08, somewhere through there. I was at Ledford High School, not too long out of college, and I was coaching primarily JVs. But then, during the playoff run that we had, me and the other JV coach, we were going on the road scouting,
Yeah,
and and West Lincoln was one of the places we went, and that was
that's funny you bring that up.
that was a heck of an atmosphere.
So it's funny you bring that up because what would this been around like? I'm trying to think, what was I in 6th, 7th grade? Would this been around like 08, 09 ish, somewhere around in there?
Yes, yes, because
So
I was at Ledford from '06 to '09.
okay, so I was at that game when y'all came to West Lincoln
That's
in the
funny.
playoffs,
Small world.
and a guy named Jake Watts, or wasn't Jake Watts, I'm sorry. Jake Watts is on the team. West Lincoln hit a go-ahead or a tying homer, and the kid took his helmet off before he crossed home plate. And I remember y'all appealed it, and they called the kid out. And y'all ended up winning the game by a run. But I also remember y'all's head coach got thrown out. And
yes,
when he tried to leave, he couldn't get out because he went out the side, and the gate was locked down there. So I just remember I was like 12. I remember all like the West Lincoln people just giving him heck as he was trying to find his way out of the stadium.
Yeah, that's a great recall. And we were getting all that secondhand as well, because we were wherever scouting the upcoming opponents. So we were getting all this via text or cell phone conversations, with other fans that were in attendance. But yeah, good memories there, and I just remember how passionate those fans were. And like you said, I'd seen the previous game, whoever West Lincoln was playing, they were just absolutely into it, like Pirate fans. Is very, very similar. And I knew when I heard that Coach Adams had been tossed. I think it was Coach Adams at the time. It was either Coach Adams or Coach Smith. That I was like, yeah. When I got the word that he got tossed, I knew he caught heck getting out of there.
Yeah, I remember that because it was like that was like the first West Lincoln playoff game I had went to. Like and I'm in middle school, and I think these dudes are giants out on the field. Little did I know in 3 years I was going to be out there. But I just remember sitting there, and we were sitting, on that side that the Ledford dugout was. So I just remember it like all happening right in front of me. But then there was a scuffle after that game as well. So yeah, that game got pretty heated. I remember that. Yeah, that was playoff baseball at West Lincoln it's always fun. Definitely gets a little rowdy. A bunch of country boys out there. But yeah, so now I talk to some of my players, at Maiden, and that's all they tell me, whether it's in football or baseball. They're like, we hate going to West Lincoln. They're like, it's so hard to play there.
That's one of those things, that, like you said, that was 15 or a little over 15 years ago. But if that was now, that would have been all over X and Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah, for sure.
That being the ejection, and then the near brawl or whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny how I still had a flip phone. Like I think I had a prepaid phone.
Yeah. But you had a heck of a career there at West Lincoln. But just you talk about the baseball culture and being at that game as a 12-year-old, I guess 6th or 7th grade. But talk about your background with baseball, and what other sports did you play growing up before you got to West Lincoln?
Yeah, so I started when I was 4, just at Boger City Optimist, which is technically the feeder for Lincoln High School, but that's a whole different story. But yeah, I started out over there, just played for the Boger City Yankees, and that was really what started my baseball journey, if we want to call it that. Just my love for the game started at 4 years old. Loved playing it. And then I played baseball and I played basketball. That was pretty much what I did from the time I was 4 years old. And then I dropped basketball when I got to high school because clearly it wasn't cutting it. And I knew what my gift was. So yeah, just loved playing as a kid. And it was something that just stuck with me. And I just happened to as a kid, I just happened to have, it was noticeable I had some abilities and that I was able to kind of pick up on things and be pretty coachable. And credit to my parents just for putting me around the right people. That way I could actually, it all starts whenever you first pick up a bat. So they, the people you're around. So they put me around some really good people that didn't push me away from the game. They supported me no matter what. And then just one thing led to another, and then ended up at West Lincoln, then ended up at CVCC, and then East Carolina.
Coming out of West Lincoln, you were one of the top prospects in the state of North Carolina. You were the 13th ranked outfielder according to Perfect Game, and a top 70 overall prospect. You mentioned Gardner Webb. Now, how did you settle on Gardner Webb? Who else did you consider?
Yeah, so my college journey is an interesting one. So, but with Gardner Webb, so going into it was the summer leading into my senior year. I made the state games and was playing and played in that. And that was when Gardner Webb saw me for the first time, reached out to me, and that was when the conversation started with them. And it was really, which I know those numbers were there, but it was really them in Western Carolina. That was and CVCC. I didn't really hear from anybody else. Um, I look back at it now, and I was like, well, it's probably because I was about 160 pounds. I probably didn't look like a college athlete. I was pretty thin. But it was those two, and then I remember going down to Georgia to play, and I kind of the whole Western thing just kind of phased out. So it was really just Gardner Webb, and then that fall they made an offer, and thought about it for a while, and ended up committing there. And I committed there as a two-way player. I was the original deal was I was going to come in, play outfield, hit, and then pitch out of the bullpen. That showed up on campus. That was not how it went. Um, they wanted me to be a PO, and it wasn't that maybe I couldn't do it eventually. It just I wasn't happy with it, and I wasn't very good with it. I was a good high school pitcher, but I wasn't what I would call a college guy, and just didn't really like how it was handled. I remember I got there, and the pitching coach didn't know that I was going to pitch. So there was an executive decision made somewhere that I was going to be a pitcher, but the pitching coach didn't know about it. So from day
Yeah.
one, it was kind of odd. And they told me, and I'm not trying to talk bad about them because they're good people, good coaches, good staff. It was just the way the cards felt. But they told me that I was going to pitch for, for whatever period of the fall for a few weeks. And then I was going to join the hitter as well. That never happened. And by the end of the fall, they had told me that there was a slight chance that I would hit by my junior year. So that was when I made the decision to transfer out to go to CVCC. And you know, going from having a really good high school career to a place where they wanted me to do something that I wasn't really all in for, and then not getting the hit, and then being on my own, I picked up some like bad study. I say bad study habits as in like I didn't study. Like I let the baseball side affect the school side, and it started to affect my grades and things like that. So it was by the end of that fall, I knew that if I wanted to save my baseball career, I needed to just find somewhere new. And fortunately, it was CVCC.
Yeah, it's certainly understandable. When you went somewhere like that and you thought you were going to be a two-way player, and then they tell you that you're going to be a pitcher only in their eyes, and then the pitching coach didn't know about it. That's kind of tough to figure. But like you're saying, it sounds like overall you handled it pretty well, and did what was best for you, and everything happens for a reason. And you were at CVCC. Um, I think when you said you redshirted, and then so you didn't have a ton of experience early, but then your sophomore year there, you had a huge jump and just put up astronomical numbers: 460 with 18 bombs, 74 RBIs, 21 doubles, and you were the Division II JUCO National Player of the Year.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And side note, I apologize for the camera bugging out. I'm not
Oh,
sure
no
why I did
problem.
that.
Here in a second, after you finish this thought on my previous comment, if you want to sign out and back in, I have something I can promote in the meantime.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would hate for it to be frozen the whole time. But yeah, but anyway, back to the CVCC thing. So yeah, so that was aside from coming to ECU, CVCC was the best decision that I've made. Baseball wise, it's definitely up there with ECU because it just happened at two different periods of my life. Like going to CVCC at that time was the best decision I made, and then coming to ECU was the best decision I made at that point in my life when it was time to make that decision. Yeah, at CVCC, I walked in, I transferred in at the break, came in, and was told like, hey, because I played some first base in high school, they're like, hey, the fastest way on the field will be to play, first base because we don't have anybody locked in. So it's like, all right, I'll go for it. Uh, it didn't take me long to look around and realize how small I was compared to all of those guys. Just since they had a whole fall of JUCO lifting, which is a beast in itself. And I actually walked up to Coach Roselle and was like, I need a red shirt. Like, they didn't give me the red shirt. Like I told him, it's like, I need a red shirt because I don't need to waste a year because I'm not going to play this year. My swing is awful right now because I haven't hit in 6 months. It's like, I need to find a weight room. I need to get my academics back underneath me. I need to eat right. And I really basically just had to transform who I was at that point. And they were on board with it, and they were like, "Hey, no problem. You'll come here before practice, get your work in. Work individually with the other few red shirts we had, and then you don't have to stay for practice. You can go to the weight room, do what you got to do." And that was what I did for that whole spring. Was came to practice, did my hitting and stuff, outfield, drove down the road, went to the weight room, and then went home. And then, but it was really that summer I kind of had a heart to heart with myself. There was a lot of accountability to be had that summer, just going into that next year. Because like I said, I let the baseball side, just being immature, affect the academic side. So it kind of slipped a little. And I knew I was a good student. It just being young and letting baseball be the world just kind of affected that. So I came in that fall with a completely different mindset, and just crush it in the classroom. I think I put on around 15 pounds that fall and winter, just living in the weight room and eating right, handled the work, and had a good fall. And came out in the spring. It was the first practice back from Christmas break. We were doing some rundown drills, and I was at first, and I rounded second, and whoever was playing third, they were involved in it, and I thought I could take third, just catch them off guard. Well, when I took off, I popped my hamstring. Probably just from putting on 15 pounds of muscle and never stretching. Probably had something to do with it. Popped my hamstring, and that happened like 2 weeks before the season started. So was out for a month. Thought I was good to go. Came back first day of practice. Went for a shoestring grab in the outfield. Popped it again. So missed another month. Came back, played for a few games, tweaked it in a game, same hamstring, tweaked it again, trying to take off or something. Then finally looked for the trainer and was like, look, I'm not walking back up out on the field until I can rehab it, walk into a weight room and squat and have no pain. So looking at another month of baseball that I missed before I was finally healthy enough to stay on the field. Well, by that point, we're 30 games into a season, lineup set. So had some adversity to deal with, which helped me in the long run. So spent a lot of time in the dugout, just watching the game, trying to learn what I could, but also understanding that, like, I understood why I wasn't on the field. Like, it wasn't like I was being cheated or anything. It's like, hey, those dudes are good. I've been out for 2.5 months. Like, we're 30 games into this thing. So I got at bats here and there, but understood that it wasn't my year to be the starter, which was fine. Right. Still another year of development. That summer, went and played in a collegiate league, the Southern Collegiate Baseball League, with a lot of teams down in Charlotte. Played in that, had a good summer. And then that fall really made my spring. And that fall, still living in the weight room, obviously, was stretching and making sure I stayed healthy. But kind of did a little bit of an overhaul of my swing. I started watching a lot more videos, started watching some college and pro guys, made an adjustment with my hands, kind of fiddled with that all fall, made an adjustment with my hands. But it was 7 days. I don't want to say 7. It was about 5, 6 days a week. I was in a cage, just constantly hitting. I would get to practice almost 2 hours early just to hit in the cage by myself. That way it was just me and nobody else, and I could just find what was working for me and what was going to fit my swing. Made that adjustment, had a great fall, stayed healthy, came back in the spring, and before the season started, I had made like a weird adjustment with my stance. And my hitting coach, Coach McDonald, who's now the head coach, and then Coach Roselle, who was the head coach at the time, that's with the Rays organization now, they're like, what are you doing? It's like, what do you mean? They're like, dude, you just raked all fall. Why are you changing? I was like, I don't know. They're like, dude, get out of your head. You're going to be good to go play. And then it just clicked. Like, I remember we had the first weekend, played well, ended up hitting a home run in like the first game on Sunday, or the only game on Sunday. And I was like, all right, I had a good weekend. Then the next weekend, it kind of just did the same thing. I was like, all right, it's like another good weekend. And then I believe we went and played Walter State. I think that's who we went to play, which is a powerhouse in JUCO baseball. And just went off up there, hit another home run. I was like, all right, well, maybe this power thing is coming around. And really from then on, I found a groove and I was fortunate enough and blessed enough that I was able to ride that streak for an entire season because it was a lot of fun being able to do what I did that year.
Yeah, I can imagine. Again, 460, 18 bombs, 74 RBIs, and 21 doubles in that 2017 season. So, Chandler, why don't you go ahead and reset things and sign back in, and we'll talk to you here in a moment or two. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and plug the new Bethany Bradshaw book, Never Take This for Granted.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So Pirates, Pirate Nation, will be rejoined here in just a minute or two by Chandler Jenkins and talk about his recruitment to East Carolina following that 2017 season, how he wound up a Pirate. But in the meantime, if you have not ordered Never Take This for Granted, and you like Pirate baseball, which I'm assuming you do if you're listening to this podcast, then you need to order the book. I ordered it yesterday. And if you buy it, if you're watching this live, if you purchase it here in these next 3 or 4 hours, not all, but 50% of the proceeds will go to the 23 Club. Again, go to ecubaseballbook.com and you can get the new Bethany Bradshaw book that was released back in mid-April. Never Take This for Granted, Around the Diamond with college baseball's most devoted fan base. I've had multiple friends tell me this is an excellent read, and I really look forward to getting my hands on this here in the next few days. As I purchased it last night. But we have a comment here. Juan Blanco chime in and say, "Great read." Appreciate that, Juan. Yeah, and then also Bethany also wrote Coaching Third, the Keith LeClaire story that was released back in 2010. So if you've not read that book, there you see on the right side of our screen, tremendous read. Definitely have read that in its entirety and look forward to doing so again here soon. Devotions that Coach LeClaire wrote with his eye gaze machine when he had ALS. Just some excellent devotionals that, whether you're a baseball fan, coach, player, just a human being, it's an excellent read and something that you can apply to your life. I think Chandler is back with us. Let's see here. There we go. Got you now.
I hope it works. Sorry, it froze up for a while.
Oh, no problem. But yeah, just was talking about Never Take This for Granted, and I'm sure you're familiar with Coaching Third, the Keith LeClaire story.
Oh yeah, we all have to read it.
Something that you guys read, and I think at least now, make a little bit of a presentation on some aspect of that book and how you apply it, and that's kind of a good segue there. Before we talk about your recruitment, or as I lead into your recruitment, just tell us about getting to know Coach Palumbo, Coach Godwin, and how you wound up at East Carolina.
Yeah, so another pretty interesting story because there for a while I thought they were completely off the table, and not because of I did anything wrong or that they weren't interested. Just whenever some people that I knew that were reaching out to them about me, they just weren't looking for an outfielder. They were full. They just didn't need one. So I remember walking down to practice and Coach Roselle was like, yeah, he's like, we reached out, talked, but they don't need one right now. I was like, okay, no problem. Not a big deal. Just kind of just chalked it up and moved on. Didn't give it much thought. But then a week later, I come back down the stairs. He's like, hey, Coach Palumbo is going to call you tonight. was like, I thought they weren't looking for an outfielder. And he's like, well, he goes, he's going to call you tonight. So from my understanding, I'm not going to drop names or anything. Something from what I've been told when I got to school, not by the coaches, but by my teammates, something had happened that caused that spot to come open. And I'll just leave it at that. But it worked out for me. But yeah, so Coach Palumbo called me that night. We had a really good talk, and he just got to know me, and I got to know him. Had me send my transcripts over just to make sure everything was good admissions wise before they came out to watch me, and it wasn't that my grades were fine. By this point, my grades had completely skyrocketed. My GPA was back up, and everything was fine. But with me, I wasn't a part-time student the year I redshirted. So whenever it was time for me to be recruited and graduate from CVCC, I had to have 60% towards a major. So it actually created some conflict between me and some schools in the admissions department of some schools, because there were some schools that wanted to recruit me, but with just what they would accept based off of my credits from CVCC, whatever classes they would take, I wasn't meeting 60% towards a major. So it was almost like a coin flip for some schools. They're like, hey, we like you, but we got to find out and make sure that we have a degree that you have 60% towards. Because I was just associate of arts coming out of CVCC. So I was like, all right. So a lot of times it was just a waiting game. But sent it to Coach Palumbo, and it was like that night, he was like, hey, you're good. You can go down the communications route if everything works here. Like, that was what impressed me a lot. I was like, dang, first of all, nobody's done it that quick. Number two, like, I already at least know now before they recruit me, if things work out, I have an idea of what I would need to major in when I get to ECU, and if I would be okay with that. Because there's people out there that would have heard that and go, well, I just don't really want to do a comm major, so I'll just look for something else. But I got in, coach, and then the next big step was, because it was in season,
event occurs.
was finding out when he could come watch me. And fortunately, and like I said, I swear the stars aligned. That year, Pitt Community College moved into our conference. They moved into Region 10. Previously, they were D1. So they moved into Region 10. And we just happened to be playing there when East Carolina had a home series. So they were playing Towson that weekend. Coach Roselle and McDonald, our whole CVCC group, we actually went to the Friday night game on the way up there just for the experience. And it was cool because me and another teammate who ended up going somewhere else had both been he was talking to Roselle and I was talking to Palumbo. But it was nice because we at least got to see the environment before, we were ever potentially recruited by him. And next day rolls around, and Coach Palumbo had told me, he's like, we got a midday game, being Saturday. It's like, could be 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever it is. He's like, I got a third BP. We've got some early stuff we got to do. He goes, I'll be able to watch your BP. He goes, and we'll probably only be able to stay for one at bat. So no pressure, right? You got to have good PP and one at bat. And my BP was nothing to like be super impressive of. Like, I walked up there and I kind of just tried to hit balls in the left center gap. Like, I wasn't really trying to lift on some things. I was just kind of finding my barrel. And by that point, I was having such a good year that there was also the side to where teams were going to pitch me a little bit differently because of what I was doing. And so hit BP, and I eventually found out. I was talking to Coach Roselle, my coach at CVCC. He goes, I walked over to him and was talking to him after VP, and he goes, he said that Coach Palumbo went, he goes, just like you said, it wasn't very impressive, nothing crazy. So like, all right, there's the first strike. But fortunately, my very first at bat, the first pitch I saw, I hit out of center field. And so, like I said, I swear the stars aligned because it was off of a lefty who ended up going to Wilmington. First pitch, hit out dead center. And Roselle looked at Palumbo as he was walking away because he had to leave. And he said Palumbo just gave him a thumbs up and just kept walking. And then later that afternoon, Coach Palumbo gave me a call and was checking in on the second game, which I ended up hitting another home run in my first at of the next game. And that was kind of pretty much what started that whole recruiting thing. And that night we had discussed a weekend for me to come up on a visit. And then he surprised me in a midweek. We were playing, and he had called me before BP. He's like, hey, I'm headed down to watch you play tonight. And this was before I went on my visit. And I was like, all right, no pressure again. You're driving 4 hours to come watch me play. And we played a doubleheader that night, and I ended up going 5 for 5. So, like I said, stars had to align. When I needed to play well in front of Coach Palumbo, I did. And then, like a couple weeks later, I ended up going on the visit, fell in love with the place, and I committed the very next day.
So yeah, forget the BP, coach. I'm a gamer.
Yeah, it was, and like, fortunately, I didn't let that bother me too much. I was like, hey, it's what's been working all year, so I'm gonna keep doing it. And I will say, like the later rounds of that BP session, I did hit a couple out. Like I had to show off something, but
Yeah,
most of it was me just slapping balls into left field.
right. So you choose East Carolina. You're making that transition, and the Pirates were coming off, very atypical year in 2017. You had the 2016 season where you're literally 90 feet from Omaha, down in Lubbock, Texas, and then such high expectations in 2017 where you were top 6 in most polls, going into the season, and then you had some key injuries and just things didn't unfold as you would like. Went 32 and 28, something like that. And, like Coach Godwin has said since on numerous occasions, that season, those shortcomings really laid the foundation for where the program is now, as much as it sucked at the time. So entering the program, kind of coming off that year that you were not a part of the team, and going through the fall and that transition, and making that jump to Division I baseball, a program that's consistently top 20 like that. What was that like with Mission Week and so forth?
Yeah, so that fall, they pushed us that fall. So obviously, had the down year day before after coming off of the 2016 team. And matter of fact, I remember going on the way to Walter State when I was at CVCC because I just love college baseball. So I watch it all the time, no matter who it is. And ECU was playing Ole Miss to start the 17 season. And I remember sitting in the back of the bus and I'm watching it with my buddy beside me. And Dewanya, hit his like first at bat, he hit one out to start the year. I was like, the Pirates are going to do it again. They're going to be legit. And then of course, things unfortunately just went sideways. But that didn't really affect my mindset when I was being recruited, mainly because when I went on my visit and saw everything, and with the conviction that Coach Godwin and Coach Palumbo talked about of like, hey, this is just a down year. This isn't like what it's like. It's not what it's like here. We're gonna fix some things this year. And then talking to Coach Golden, our strength coach at the time, was completely bought in by the time I left and knew that just had to be a fluke year. And then that fall, that started that summer for us transferring in. Coach Golden, he put us through the ringer with those summer workouts. But their words were, "We're going to find out who wants to be here," and but it made us tougher. And then coming in the fall, it was very, very detailed, and it stayed that way ever since. Like we had little things which maybe you've heard before, like just in terms of how we lined up to stretch. Like if your pinky toe was past the line, there was accountability for it, and it was on the players to hold each other accountable. Now, obviously, the coaches did what they needed to do, but it was up to the players. Like, hey, dude, get your foot behind the line, that kind of deal. So they were eliminating this idea of, hey, we can be successful by cheating, by not being as detailed and not being as focused. And it's clearly worked, but it worked that fall. I mean, and it didn't take us long to catch on because I think a lot of the guys had a bad taste in their mouth from the year before. And a lot of those guys were on the 16 team, so they knew what they had and they knew just that wasn't them. So there was a lot of accountability. Guys would support each other. But like I said, little things like just being behind the line, making sure you're on time, making sure that you help out other guys. So, like, for instance, we each had duties. So that was so in 18, we had the outdoor cage. So if a guy had ball duty where they had to clean up the cage, but they had a late class, who was going to run in there and pick that guy up and clean the baseballs up for him? That way he could get his work done and then get on the field for stretch. So it was implementing little things like that and just being super detailed, not cutting reps in the weight room, making sure we're watching each other to make sure guys are going completely down on the squat, things like that. Make sure guys are, when we're running sprints, are actually getting through the line and not pulling up with 5 feet to go. And I mean, like, it was was like having a hawk just fly above us the entire time and watch every little move we made. And but again, it set the tone and it was awesome. Unfortunately, I actually didn't really get to participate in the 2018 mission week. I tweaked my hamstring a couple weeks before. I think it may have been. Did I do it in the purple gold, or did I think I did it the week before the purple gold World Series. It was something like that. So, and then mission week falls not too long after that. So I didn't get to. I got to do some events like upper body stuff, but I didn't get the full experience. Now I did get the full experience of the program, which they started that year as well. I don't know if you've heard about that with the program being brought in, the former military guys who run that system and work with a lot of professional organizations. Now I was healthy for that, and that mentally, that's one of the hardest things I've been through. But it was worth it. Like looking back, like I remember like being done with it and was like, yeah, that was hard, but I actually kind of enjoyed that. So we had things like that, and you just saw it carry over into the season. I mean, from the first series against Western, sweep them, and then run into Carolina and just take 2 or 3 against them. And we really didn't slow down. Like now obviously we had to prove ourselves. And if you want to talk about rankings, like we had to prove ourselves. Like, so we really didn't jump up in the rankings till later in the year. But again, we didn't care about rankings. We just cared about doing what we needed to do to win baseball games. And it's worked out. And that's what's really stuck since then. Cause I mean that, like rolling into the 2019 team, we were a well-oiled machine. There was a lot of vets on that team, and like everybody knew what to do without being told. Like you could see the year before, as good as it was, had carried over, and things had just become second nature for all of us guys. And then of course you saw it roll into what the 2019 season was, which was super special. And then it's just continued that way ever since. I know I was briefly talking to Coach Godwin a few weeks ago, and told him, I was like, yeah, I'm a little biased because I was a part of the 18 team that came in, but I really felt that we really set the tone and established what it's become now. Obviously, people who were before us set the tone and set the standard of what it should be. We just helped bring it back, and I felt like we set the standard of what it needed to stay at for the rest, what ECU baseball is, because the guys before us did it. Then you had the 17 where it went kind of down. And then you had 18 where it was like, all right, like these guys set the standard. We need to live up to that standard, but it's up to us to make sure it stays that way from now on. And now you've gotten the ECU product that you've seen since 2018, which has just been an absolute force.
You bring up that first ever traveling series with the Tar Heels in week 2 of the 2018 season. Heck of a series, not only for the team, but for you individually as well. You had Trey Benton pitching a gem on Friday night at Clark LeClaire, and won 2-1, I think it was.
Yeah, just 2-1. Yep.
And then at the DBAP on Saturday night, huge crowd there, probably at least 7,000 or 8,000. And I'll never forget, even though we lost the game, I remember. I remember the home run by Spencer Brickhouse to left center.
Mm-hmm.
That place was electric.
Yeah.
And we lost a 1 or 2 run game in that one, and then turned around on Sunday afternoon at the Bosch, and really, put it all together, 12-0. Everything was going right for us, and if it could go wrong for the Tar Heels, it did. And you probably don't remember this because it was with that lopsided margin, but it just stood out to me. Me and my dad just thought it was hilarious. I think it was fairly late in that game. We already had a 9 or 10 run lead, and there was a ball that was on the warning track there, just beyond third base, in shallow left field and foul ground. And either the third baseman or the left fielder picked up the ball and took it back to throw, and it slipped out of his hand and went into the crowd, and we just lost it.
Yeah. That was Kyle Datras, who the night before hit one 500 feet I think it was to take the lead for them. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, he was a good player. But yeah, it worked out for us. I'm glad he made that mistake.
But in that series, you went. I saw this, in your bio on ECUPirates.com. You went 5 for 11, so that really had to mean a lot to you there in your first year with the Pirates to have such a huge series against the 6th-ranked team in the country?
Yeah, so it's funny. I grew up in a diehard Carolina household. It's not that way anymore. I want nothing to do with them.
I'm glad you saw the light. I'm glad you saw the
Yeah,
light.
yeah. So I grew up like as a kid, we watched college basketball and all that. Well, so when I was in 8th grade, somehow we landed on like home season tickets for Carolina. So like we were in Chapel Hill every other weekend whenever they would play at home. So it was like, as a young kid who just has dreams when you're like 10, like it was like I want to go play at North Carolina. And then when I saw that I was going to have the opportunity to play against them, and then being on campus, and all I heard from guys was just like how much they hated playing them. And it took one game for me to just completely abandon everything that I had stood for as a Carolina fan for 20 years. And ever since that day, I have absolutely despised North Carolina. So that series was fun, and now I actually got my first hit at ECU in that Friday night game. I hit a double off the left field wall, so it was pretty cool. I have a picture that someone took of that game. It's in my classroom at school, and I'm on second. I'm like yelling towards the dugout, and the whole the jungle is like in the back, and it's just like hands and stuff in the air. It's one of my favorite pictures that I have. It was pretty cool. So that was a nice initiation into the ECU Carolina rivalry. And like I said, the Saturday game was a heck of a game. Like speaking about Spencer's homer, like I was in the hole when he hit that, and I was standing on the upper steps of the dugout, and it felt like the ground was shaking underneath me. It was pretty insane. And then Sunday was just awesome, just beat the crap out of those dudes. And I remember you talk about Datris, the ball going over the wall. I remember watching what little fans they had there started to turn on Coach Fox. He went out there for a mound visit or something, and one of his own fans yelled at him, and he stopped and turned around and stared at him. And it was just so nice watching them just fall completely apart and us to do it at their field. So yeah, that was a nice start to that ECU Carolina rivalry. And then we only played them once my senior year, and that was when Washer hit the grand slam in the first inning, and then we flipping smoked them then too. So yeah, I piss on the Tar Heels. I can't stand them.
There you go. And also something I told you I was going to mention to you, in preparation for this interview, you talk about getting your first hit in that Friday night game against North Carolina. You had your first home run, I guess, a week or two later. They came against Old Dominion. What are your memories of that?
Yeah, so I got a really cool memory about that. So I didn't start. I didn't start that game. Dewanye was out there, and Dewanye tweaked something in that game. I can't remember if it was his back or his hand. It was something. So I ended up going in. My first at bat, I remember I fouled one off down the right field line. It either hit the wall or it went out foul. But I just remember it being a really good swing, and I remember just seeing the dude on the mound really well. And I think I ended up getting out, or I think I got out that at bat. But I remember looking at Connor Litton, if you remember him. He was one of my roommates that year, and I was like, I think I either said something along the lines of it's feeling good, or I'm going to get one tonight. It was something like that. And then sure enough, got a pitch down and in, and just kind of dropped the barrel on it, and I knew it was gone, but it didn't go out as far as I thought it was. So I kind of there was a little bit of flare. After I hit it, I kind of just walked and then dropped the bat. And then I was like, oh, wow, that ball didn't go near as far as I thought it was, but it did go out. So that was a pretty cool moment. And I just remember getting ready, because I remember getting ready to go to the outfield, and Bryant Packard had just hit a home run, his first one of the year that night as well. And so just a lot of the guys were fired up for both of us for the bat really coming alive that game. So that was a cool moment. It was just cool, getting around the bases at Clark LeClaire with all the fans there for the first time after hitting a home run. It's a pretty cool moment, just because it just gets so loud inside your helmet. It just takes you to a new world.
Another, weekend that had to be memorable, kind of for a different reason, was having the opportunity to travel out to Seattle, Washington, to take on the Washington Huskies. You guys took the series, winning, I think, games 1 and 3. But that weekend, that backdrop, is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's incredible. I will say though, I will never go back to Seattle, Washington again. That place was awful. The stadium was great, but oh my gosh, it was so depressing. It did nothing but
Really?
rain. We had the time difference. Like several guys got like half sick with colds on the way back just from that travel, and then the East Coast and the sloppy rain they had. Now, was it a cool experience? Yes, because we got to go to Seattle. We got the tour, down there at the Pike Place Market, and we saw the Mariners field, well, their old field before it became T-Mobile. Um, and then, like you said, the backdrop that's so iconic with the lake and the mountains behind center field was really, really cool. Now, stadium wise is great. Got to see their football stadium, and their upper deck is like that on their stadium. Like, it made me nervous driving by. And I
Yeah.
was like, how the heck do people sit up here for football
Kind of like
games?
that upper deck at Clemson.
Yeah, just super steep. But it was a really cool experience. There's not a lot of schools that get to go coast to coast to play teams. Like we were fortunate enough to do it my senior year as well with UCLA, which was I know we got swept, but in terms of which trip that I like better was the UCLA one, mainly because the weather was way nicer. But yeah, the Washington trip was fun. Like I said, we won the game one. Game two, I believe we faced a dude. He was a big draft prospect that year on the mound. We just didn't really show up for that game, and then we knew we needed to win game three with how RPI and stuff worked just against a team like that and the non-conference RPI, and came out there and just had a really good game and beat them and had a good flight home. We were able to come home happy after traveling that far.
Now, before we move ahead to 2019 in your senior season, that 2018 year when you guys won the conference tournament, was that the year where we had so much rain and had to play on the backfields, or no?
It was. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, we played UCF on the Threshers field game one. Played Houston game two. That was when the ejection. Coach Godwin got ejected. And like that game got out of hand. Like it was funny. Like I laugh at Coach getting ejected there because he did like his famous like squat and say the pitch is down, like that he likes to do at third base. But the dude behind the plate was he. Not to go down the umpire route, but he was looking to throw Coach out, and that happened. I remember I think he stared Delania down like at one point, but yeah, so that happened. Well, then that was when all the rain moved in. So I remember I think we played Tulane at the backfield, and we came back and won that game, and then we played Houston the next day, and like I think Coach Maynor started, but like they didn't have any pitching left, and they rolled out like a position player who had pitched some. I believe we beat them pretty big in that game, and then we had UConn out on the big field. The rain had finally passed. But yeah, people think like those facilities are phenomenal. The big field's phenomenal, but those backfields are rough. Like there's patches everywhere. The fact that our infielders played as well as they did on a surface like that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. I say that. I mean, I guess perhaps it was because of the time of year. Being there
Yeah,
in late May. Perhaps during spring training and stuff. I don't know. I just would you would think
oh yeah,
when you have professional guys playing on those fields, they're going to be really really maintained and
yeah.
manicured well.
And you never know; they may have been perfect in
Right.
March, April, and then they just let it go once all the guys leave. Now the Threshers field, obviously, that was immaculate.
Right.
But yeah, those back ones, because I thought they were all going to be luscious grass, and I was like, man, this feels a little sketch. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was a big surprise to me. But yeah, that winning that was huge because I remember when we went down there, we knew that we were like a fringe host. We knew it kind of depended on what we did down there, and fortunately, we were able to beat a really good UConn team who is I loved playing them, but hated playing them because they were just always a team that played us super, super well. But all the guys on their team were really cool. So like it was a fun series, but it was just like dang, like don't really want to play them in this moment because of just how solid they are. But fortunately, faced adversity and rolled out there, and both teams were tired, and we're fortunately we didn't have to worry about two games. We beat them in that first game and won the tournament.
Yeah. Like you said, won the conference tournament after not winning the regular season, and you had the opportunity to host a regional at Clark LeClaire. You had South Carolina, UNC Wilmington coming to town, and
Yeah.
lost a close game to the Gamecocks.
Yeah, a late
But
one too. We started at like 10:30 at night.
yeah, yeah. As it so often does, the rain impacted the Greenville Regional. Imagine that.
Yeah, I
And
did both
then,
years.
yeah, and then against UNC Wilmington, you were rolling, and then you had the rain delay, and you couldn't keep Jake Agnos in the game, and
You could
it didn't turn out the
that
way we wanted.
Yeah, that one felt weird. It was like a 4-hour rain delay. It was insane. And I remember we came back, and when we started, some things happened, and I was like, those aren't very common. And like I had a very weird feeling in my stomach in the dugout in the latter half of that game. And unfortunately it was a painful way to lose after doing what we did that year. Um and some of the guys, getting drafted and moving on and graduating, not getting to play with those guys anymore. But that was still a fun series. I mean, we beat Wilmington that Friday night with 5,000-6,000 people in the stands, packed out. Then we played SEC.
Connor Litton had that home run early to
Yeah,
right field.
yes, he did. And then turn around and rain impacts, and then we play South Carolina. And honestly, like playing at 10:30 at night is fun. You get down at like 1 o'clock in the morning is fun, especially in an environment like that. And as crowded as the place was, everybody stayed. Everybody was rowdy, and it was a good game. Just Andrew Hendrickson made that Sports Center #1 catch on the center field wall, robbing that home run in that game. That was a great game. It was just they just got the bounce and we did, and that's kind of really what it came down to. And then just the craziness that happened against Wilmington.
Seems like you talk about the atmosphere. Seems like it was maybe our Pack was perhaps batting leadoff as he often did, and the first pitch he saw, he just hit a rocket into the left center gap.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think they were able to cut it off and hold him to a single perhaps, but it was
Yeah.
the jungle just went nuts, and I was like, here we go. But
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it wasn't our night.
Yeah. That place. The crowd pop at EC at Clark LeClaire is something else.
It definitely is, and you talk about the ground shaking in a moment or two during your career, and you think about the Charlotte game when Lane Hoover got the big hit in the
Yeah.
regional. You
Yeah.
think about the Texas games, and then games against the Tar Heels, and there's several down through the years where you've
Oh
heard
yeah.
players talk about you could really feel the ground moving.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about Lane Hoover's hit against Charlotte. I was in an Outback Steakhouse watching it on my phone, and I was like yelling in the restaurant whenever I was yelling for Coach to send him on base. It was so fun. It was funny because my family was laughing at me, but I'm just sitting at the table just yelling while that's going on.
Yeah, and
Well, I mean, you talk about the one this year with Dixon, his home run against Wake.
yeah, oh yeah, I was certainly there for both of them, and you know, definitely unbelievable moments. And that one this year with Dixon, Bryant Packard, he was clearly one of your teammates, and Pack was saying today, on the Holt Naylor show, which was an excellent interview. For those of you who have not heard it yet, go and check it out. But Pack said that the crowd pop and the way the crowd was on Dixon's home run off Chase Burns, it was the loudest he's ever heard it.
Oh wow, holy cow,
And
that's awesome.
so that's saying something. I
Yeah.
don't. Pack was still playing, so he wasn't at Texas, because I think that's the loudest I've heard it. The purple gold cheers against Texas were it's at 6,000, 6,500, whatever it was. I know they announced it at 58 or 5,900, but we all know it was more than that,
Yeah.
and it really sounded more like 50 or 60,000.
Yeah, and another good story about the Texas one. So I was coaching with Athletes Lab. We were down at York High School in South Carolina, and I was walking in and I was watching the team playing before us, and I was like, man, looks like Eric Tyler standing at third base. And sure enough, Eric was coaching baseball rebellion before he got the Duke job, and we were talking about it. And well, he left, and I had to coach while that final game was going on, the game that we ended up losing, and I'm standing on third base, but like every inning, Eric is like walking over to me. He's like, "Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Here's what's going on." It's like could have cared less about what was going on the field. I was too worried about what Eric was going to tell me between every inning.
Yeah, I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one that's done that down through the years. I had similar experiences, back when several years ago, when the Pirates were playing football on Thursday night, and I was coaching high school football.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, during halftime, getting a quick update.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But going on to that 2019 season, that really, you talk about the 2018 team setting the tone, for that run that the program's currently on. After winning the conference tournament in 18, you guys won the regular season for the first time. Or it's not the first time, but it was the first regular season title of the current 5-peat.
You there?
Chandler,
Yeah.
if
Okay.
you can hear me, you froze up
Yeah, we're
again.
good.
Sign it. I was going to say sign out and back in very quickly because you're frozen up on my end, and we'll continue on.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know if the
No
signal
problem.
was
No
bad
problem.
or what.
No problem. Chandler Jenkins will be back with us here in a moment. In the meantime, I want to talk about some of the things Pirates did in the summer collegiate leagues. You had Dixon Williams. Dixon Williams was the batting champion up in the New England Collegiate Baseball League, the NECBL. He was playing for the Newport Gulls in Newport, Rhode Island. And as you see there on the screen for viewers, you had Dixon. Not only was he the batting champion, he was the MVP, and then also the Steven Strasburg top pro prospect in the New England Collegiate Baseball League. So congratulations to Dixon Williams. Had a very solid sophomore year for the Pirates. We were just talking about his home run off Chase Burns, and really look forward to what Dixon will do in 2025 as a junior. And also you had Colby Wallace, Seawall. He was the batting champion in the Valley League for the Charlottesville Tom Sox. He hit 370. Really had a heck of a summer. And then Nick Parham was also with the Tom Sox. And then earlier off the air, Chandler and I were talking about the Bethesda Big Train and what Carter Cunningham, Alec Burleson, and other Pirates have done with them down through the years. Sent them two more Pirates this year. Davin Whitaker and Keenan Bowman both had excellent summers. Davin Whitaker hit 324 with 3 bombs, and they drove in about 25 or 30 runs and had 10 plus doubles. And then Keenan Bowman, he also had an all-star summer as he was named to the Cal Ripken all-star team. But Chandler is back with us, so we'll get him on the screen here and continue on and talk about that 2019 season. What I was saying is that regular season title in 2019, that was the first in the current 5-peat.
Yeah, that team was. We were pretty dang good. That team was a lot of fun. Like I said, there was a lot of like we were able to police ourselves, right? Like obviously, the coaches, you know, had the ultimate authority, but we all knew the standard. We weren't going to let anybody fall below that standard, and it was our job to bring the younger guys who had just come in up with us, and we really just we didn't miss a beat from 2018. If anything, we got even better, right? We became even more of a cohesive unit. We had so many seniors and draft guys, and a lot of guys going into that year, I think, knew that whether they were getting drafted or just graduating, that it was going to be the last year that we were going to be there. And I mean, just from day one, like we were wide open, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, they always say winning's fun, but that senior season, like, there's not many moments that baseball players, get to experience like that, because we rode a high for a very, very, very long time. But we also knew that we couldn't get wrapped up in everything that was being said, because everywhere you looked, it was the Pirates are doing this or doing that. you couldn't even watch a college baseball game to where the broadcasters, whenever they, especially late in the year, started talking about potential regionals, where they were talking about how good we were doing. So, to quote Coach Godwin again, we kind of had to ignore what was going on and just stay focused, because we knew we needed to win that regional, right? Like, we knew we didn't need to do essentially what we did last year after having an even better year, right? We didn't want to do all of that, have the super high ranking, and then bring in a regional, and then just proceed to do the same thing again. And we scared everybody when we lost to Quinnipiac, but we made sure to get it back on track the next day against State.
Yeah, with that loss to Quinnipiac, you had, I guess it was Liam Scaffarello hit one of the longest home runs I've ever seen hit at Clark
Yeah, yeah.
LeClaire. Unfortunately, I'd like to know, what the exit velocity and the distance was on that.
Oh
It
yeah,
had to be pushing 500 feet. It was
yeah.
unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yep, I remember that. That as and it was one of those games where you can't overlook the 4 seed, right? Like, we all know,
Right,
and I know this is a sensitive subject, but we
right.
saw it with Evansville, right? And Quinnipiac rolls in, and I thought we were ready for the game. We approached it. I didn't think it was like nobody thought that we were just going to just walk all over them. But it just it's kind of like those games like where you're the favorite, but you notice that you don't pull away early, and there's some missed opportunities, and then they're just kind of hanging around. So it kind of creates that kind of uneasy feeling when you're watching the game. And I just remember getting like halfway through that game and just again was kind of feeling uneasy about it, similar to what I have felt against Wilmington the prior year. Um, and that kid, or that guy had the big home run, but then we didn't go away. Alec had one of the most iconic throws to right field you could have, just threw an absolute laser to home plate to keep us in that game. And I just love seeing Washer and like Evan Voliva's reaction, and then Alec running off like just yelling from right field all the way in. And and of course, at that moment we thought like, hey, that was our moment. We're about to turn this thing around. And unfortunately, it just didn't go our way. Like I said, I don't think anybody, I don't think it was no one showed up. It just, for whatever reason, it was their night to win. And so yeah, but that was that game sucked, but yeah, we got back on track.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly the easy thing to say. Not that it doesn't happen, because it clearly does, but when you see a four beat a one, the easy thing to say is that the one seed took them for granted.
Yeah,
But yeah, definitely remember that throw from right field, and then I'm sure you also recall, in addition to that game changing play, or potential game changing play at that point, he also came in and struck out the side. I think
yeah,
he had inherited a bases loaded, no out
yeah. That is right.
situation, and he struck out the side.
That is right. I actually completely forgot about that. That is right. He did do that. Yep.
But
Yeah, that dude's a beast.
that was electric, and at that point I was like, we're going to win this game,
Yeah,
and
right. Like, you can just feel the momentum shift, and
yeah.
then just for whatever reason, we didn't get the hit we needed.
But kind of like this year, unfortunately, we didn't close it out on Monday against the Purple Aces. But that year, you had Jake Agnos just had an unbelievable start, in that game against the Wolfpack the next day.
Yeah, so that NC State game is like number 2 on my favorite games of all time. There, number 1 definitely us winning the regional that game, beating Campbell. But that game against NC State, that was that very like gritty ECU win. Like, our backs were against the wall against a really good in-state opponent, and everybody knew there was some carryover from the year before. Whenever the game we were supposed to play at third place got canceled, and I remember it created this whole like social media storm between Pirate fans and State fans about like why they wouldn't reschedule it. It was never really talked about amongst us, but like we all remember, just like, because I remember like when State got in that bracket with us, I was like, we got to play them. Unfortunately, we both played them in the worst way possible with an elimination game. But it was a very like, we basically had to man up, stick our chest out, and go, hey, like, We know what we're capable of. We just need to go out here and play our brand of baseball and let it take care of itself. And it did, because from the first inning, well, aside from Patrick Bailey's home run that he hit in the first, going back to Alec Burleson plays, I remember Alec made us dive and play in the first inning of that game, in left field.
Yep, showcasing
And
that athleticism that you always
yeah,
hear. You hear him jokingly talk about now.
oh yeah, for sure, yeah. And then I just remember, the next inning, their starter just was all over the place, and when he came in the zone, we didn't miss, and we really just blew that game open. And like I said, Jake had a flipping performance of a lifetime in front of a massive crowd. And then just there was some like small drama that I don't think people know about before the game that came. It dealt with like, because like the NCAA, like, you get to host, but they don't want it to be home field advantage or whatever, and they have the whole locker room deals and stuff. Well, I remember we chose to be the away team, and there was this like whole thing that happened before the game, and I don't know all the details. That'd be more of a Coach Godwin question, but what I do know is I remember they, in NC State fashion, took like the camper tents down into the bullpen and had set them up. And there was like this whole conversation about whether or not they could have them. So like that happened like before the game, and I think they were allowed to have them, or they took them down. I can't exactly remember what happened. You would think I know. I was in right field beside the bullpen, but for whatever reason I don't remember. But and then going into the game, like I just know we were fired up. But people have asked me before, like, was there pressure? I was like, no. I mean, it was a pretty normal day in the locker room, and a pretty normal day during BP. Like, we were all joking around like we normally do, but being serious when we needed to be, and then just kind of fell into our routines and took care of what we needed to do. And like I said, Jake shoved, Cam Colmore closed it out, and we put it on him.
Seems like you had a big hit or two of them there early.
Yeah, I remember. So I got walked my first at bat, and then I remember I believe the guy's name was Nick Sweeney, one of their lefty arms who was really, really good. He threw from like a weird kind of cross body slot, and low nines. And yeah, I admit this now. Part of me was a little worried when they brought him in, that because I know Coach likes to play the matchup game, which is the smart way to do it. And I was wondering, I was like, I wonder if he's going to go to somebody else, or if I'm going to stay in to face the lefty. And sure enough, Washer was sitting in front of me. Jake got a base hit. I think that's what it was. He either got walked or I hit up the middle, and I came up with bases loaded, and just got a first pitch fastball kind of elevated and just hit it right up the middle. I think we ended up scoring 2 runs on it, because I remember the center fielder like botched his throw on the way in. I forgot who was on third,
it
but
seems like he spiked it. Like,
yeah, he like T-Rex armed it and just threw it straight into the ground. Yeah, and so that was, I love that moment. I know it sounds selfish, but I love that moment. That was just a really cool moment to help the team out, knock in 2 runs to extend the lead, and then just hear the crowd just go berserk. And then the very next guy, Brady Lloyd, I was on first, smokes one down the right field line, and I remember I ended up scoring from first, and I've got a pretty cool picture. I dove in head first, and I'm like on the way up doing like a fist pump, like yelling as I'm coming up. It's a pretty cool picture that I have, and then sometimes I like to go back and look at it just because I remember the excitement of that moment. You get up and just the mob of the guys were coming out of the dugout, and we did the thing where we'd pick the teammate up, like Cooch Maynor would pick a guy up, and usually we'd yell something towards the crowd. But that was a pretty cool moment. But I just remember I remember coming around second, and then I saw like Coach Godwin. He was about to stop me, and then he sent me. I was like, I'm not slow, I'm not super fast. I was like, the ball's hitting the right field and it's not super deep. Like, it's like, I'm not so sure that I'm going to score here. But so I just put my head down and just went as hard as I could, and fortunately beat the throw. But the only reason I got to score was because, again, the right fielder, he like stumbled when he went to pick it up, and he like kicked it. So it gave me a couple extra steps to score.
You mentioned Wash, and so you set that one up nicely. What a regional he had. I can't remember, and this was perhaps on air, but or maybe it was backstage pre-show, just talking about how Wash had 4 or 5 bombs in that regional, and seeing the ball like it was a beach ball.
Yeah, and I was hitting right behind him too.
Yeah, and then he had Pack, in the rematch against Quinnipiac. He put one well out onto the football practice field.
So that ball, that is one of the loudest hit home runs I've heard with a metal bat, with the BB core era. From when I played, obviously, now you got the bats have continued to progress, so you still hear it all the time now. But just in person, that ball he hit just freaking disappeared into the night. And when you go back and watch, if you go back and watch it on YouTube, like the highlights of that game, it's so dang loud, and you can see like Coach Palumbo like throw his hands up in the air, and then you just see everybody behind Packard just elevate. It was pretty cool because we absolutely put it on them that night.
And then earlier you talked about Gavin Williams, and that was before Gavin really, became what he would. But in that winner take all game against Campbell, after we defeated them on Monday afternoon to force that game 7, Gavin really stepped up in that decisive game.
Yeah, he did. And so, cool story. So we're all sitting in the dugout, and I think Gavin comes out. He's like 97, and he's like 98. And all of us are like grabbing each other. We're like, he's hitting 100 tonight. And then he was like 99 for like 2 pitches. And then he finally popped triple digits on the board. I just remember the dugout went absolutely crazy because he finally popped triple digits. But yeah, they didn't stand a chance. They didn't stand a chance against Gavin that night. He was throwing absolute fuzzballs in there. And our offense, it was like after that first game against Quinnipiac when we played state, it was like the switch on our offense hit, and we just did not stop swinging the bat for that entire regional. Because after the first Quinnipiac game, there wasn't a close game. I think we put up 9 on state, double digits on Quinnipiac. And then I think we may have put up double digits twice on Campbell. Or I know the first game was, and I think the second one might have been, it was still 7 or 8 runs.
Yeah, if it wasn't double figures, it was right at it. And that was the thing, after the disappointing loss to open the regional, once we beat state, I really felt like, hey, the way we can swing the bats, I don't think Campbell's going to have the pitching depth. I mean, anything could happen, obviously, but I just really felt very confident that we could win those 4 straight games in, basically less than 48 hours? Or?
Yeah, that was a quick turnaround. I remember it was the Quinnipiac game, which, not to mention, the games got pushed back a day because we had a monsoon come through that Friday night. Yeah. We sat in the locker room for 2 or 3 hours before the game got canceled. But that night when we lost Quinnipiac, pretty cool story, they actually sent Jake Agnews home before we got done because that game still started later. They sent Jake home, and we're like, dude, like, you go home, get some rest. You got to throw tomorrow because we're going to have the day game. Make sure you're ready to go. So I thought that was pretty cool how that worked out. They sent 1 or 2 guys home, like, to make sure that they were good and fresh. And that was the only time I ever saw that happen. And then obviously it worked out. And then, but you go State, Quinnipiac, Campbell. It was just like 2 doubleheaders in a row, all 9 innings. What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? Because, by that fourth game, the last one with Campbell that we won, like, we were tired, but no, we obviously didn't show. And we knew, but again, that goes back to our training in the fall, right? Like, working with the program, what Coach makes us do, what Coach Golden had us do. The mission week that I finally got to participate in, which I actually loved every second of it. I got to participate in it my senior year. I was fully healthy, but just all of that and learning how to be mentally tough to know that, like, hey, we're going to play double headers. We're going to see some adversity, but, like, no one really cares. We just got to show up and play. And that was kind of the mindset we had going into it. It's like, yeah, we are a little tired, but whenever it's time to toe the line, we were going to show up and play.
One of our viewers here on YouTube chiming in says 9, 13, 10, and 12. So
okay, there we go.
What was what you thought there?
Yeah, I knew it was pretty close.
But unfortunately, that super regional at Louisville, a lot of you guys, you said, understandably so, that playing those 4 games in less than 48 hours and then having to play the first super regional game. I know Coach Godwin wasn't very happy about that, and understandably so, and going against the Louisville team that had some tremendous arms and bats. That didn't go well, but that you had a super regional in 2019, and then 2021, the next full season at Vandy, and then obviously 2022 hosting Texas. So just an unbelievable run there with 3 consecutive super regionals.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's a testament to what Coach Godwin and Coach Palmblow and the pitching coaches that they've had since I was there. Coach Knight, Dietrich, and then of course including Coach Rozelle, and even the volunteer guys. Right, you had Hunter Allen. At one point, we had Eric Tyler. Then you've got guys Packard, Thomas Francisco. You're getting guys coming back to the program. Right, it's a testament to what they're doing because they're able to make sure that every class that comes in understands what ECU baseball is, and just that ultimately has turned into the success you're seeing, and they deserve every bit of it, right? Like no one works harder than the coaches there and the guys at ECU. Like no matter who's there, nobody's working harder than the current group that's there. Nobody's working harder than that group.
Yeah, well said. And you see that Pirates acronym all the time. Oh, yeah. As far as toughness and selflessness and all those character traits, and it's definitely very true. Otherwise you wouldn't have the success that we've had consistently, and it's not only on the field, but I know you excelled in the classroom, and we'll here in a moment talk about what you're doing now. But give us a glimpse behind the scenes as far as that commitment to excellence in the classroom, because I think it's something like five straight years now, at least 9 or 10 semesters, where the teams had a 3.5 plus GPA.
Yeah, so I love the way Coach Godwin, and he may have tweaked it a little bit since I was there, but the way that they run it, they have like academic teams. I think they have a different phrase, but that's what we'll call it for this. And pretty much the coaches who are in on it, they draft players like on our roster based on like how they think they'll do in the semester and stuff. There may be some other nuances to it, but that's the gist of it, right? Like they look at the roster, they basically do it like a fantasy draft, and it's like, hey, we're picking this guy first. Whoever the 4-0 dude was, that was who got picked first, that kind of deal. But then what they do is it's like a competition to see which team was the best at the end of the fall or whatever. But it goes beyond that, right? So like I think it's every month you meet with whoever you had been drafted by. Like so both years I was with Coach Palumbo. So it was like every month you would meet and he pulls up your grades and you discuss what's going on, if they're good or if things have faltered, or if there's like an asterisk on there, like if a grade just hadn't been put in yet that you did well on. Like there was a lot of communication there, and you talk about it, and he's like, do you need help? Do you need a mentor? Do you need tutors? Like whatever you need. Do you have all your books? Like we'll make sure you get that. You just need to let us know if there is some sort of deficiency that has shown up unexpectedly. And then he asked you, he's like, hey, what do you think you're going to make at the end of the semester? And, whatever that maybe is based on your grades, writes it all down. They write handwritten letters to our parents, informing them how we're doing in the classroom. And I think that's pretty cool. Like you hear people talk about academics but you don't hear people talk about it like that, right? Like as if you're a parent and you're sending your kid somewhere for 4 years, in most cases, where they're trying to get a degree to pursue a life outside of baseball, you're putting them in the hands of someone that is taking active measures to make sure that you're successful, and you're seeing it happen, right? Like you've got that. I think Miss Rebecca Ward. Miss Rebecca Wade. I think she's gone now. I don't think she's still there anymore.
Yeah,
but
she left the program a year or two ago.
Yeah, she was in charge of all of our stuff. Like she was awesome. Like the moment it was time to register, when we walk in there, she already had what we needed. We were just walking and she was just explaining to us. Like there wasn't much. The only debate that we would have about a class is if you just needed an elective to cover. But other than that, it was like, hey, here's what you have. Here's where you're going to have it. It's not going to conflict with anything. Sign here, kind of deal. But she did awesome. She always sent stuff to our coaches. We had class checkers, didn't know when they were going to show up, and their job was to, exactly how it sounds, to make sure you were showing up to class. And if you didn't want to know, like you didn't want any part of what was going to happen if you didn't show up to class because you just laid out for a day. And it was randomized, so you never knew when they were going to be there, right? So you just had to make sure you show up. So just the accountability and just the way, like they don't hover, but they make sure that you're handling your business, and it's a kind of a trickle down effect, right? You might have a guy who came in who might be an iffy academic person, and by the time they leave, they're an academic All-American, And that just goes to show how good that process is. But very, very serious about the grades. They talk about it all the time. Like, you're in a position when you get there that they're not going to let you fail. Like, you're going to do well. And if you somehow fall below that line, it was because of you and your, and this isn't what they say, but this is my assumption. If that happens, you're probably not going to be there next year anyway. You're probably going to be finding a new place to play. So it's the perfect thing to make sure that every guy's hitting their mark in the classroom.
Yeah. And kind of crazy here, I guess, is back prior to COVID. When my son was playing in a baseball game in Davidson County, Rebecca Wade's family was actually from this part of the
Oh wow.
state, and just had my Pirate stuff on as I typically do, and it was during baseball season or right after baseball season, and her family saw my Pirate gear and said, "Hey, our daughter's the academic coordinator there for the baseball
That's
program," and
cool.
so we sat there and talked for a few minutes. But we have several folks chiming in tonight, and we got some of the Lincoln County crowd. Betty Burleson, the mother of Alec
Yeah.
Burleson, chiming in. Appreciate
Yeah.
that, Betty. As I'm
Yeah.
sure
Go
you heard,
Pirates. That's right.
we
Alex
were
killing
talking.
it.
Yep, we were reflecting on some of Alec's top moments in that 2019 uh, Greenville Regional against Quinnipiac, where he threw the guy out from right field and then struck
Oh
out the
yeah.
side with the bases loaded and nobody outs, Betty, if you weren't tuned in at that point. But here in a moment we'll have an MLB report. But before we let you run, Chandler, tell Pirate fans what you're up to now. I think early in the show we mentioned you working at Athletes Lab, but you're an English teacher at Maiden High School and also assistant varsity baseball coach.
Yeah, I'm in Maiden High School now. So actually, my teaching career started. I'm going on year 3 now. So I didn't go into teaching right out of college. I went tried. Well, my first thing was I wanted to go the college coaching route. So when I graduated, 3 days after we got back from Louisville, I was recruiting with CVCC out of the state games. I was a volunteer assistant there. So spent a year there, and unfortunately, it was a COVID year because that team we were pretty dang good. I was the outfield coach, and then I was actually fortunate enough for Coach Rozelle trusted me with this. I actually got to run the offense in the game from third base. So first year coach as a volunteer, I was getting to call I was coaching third and calling all of the offensive plays over at the third, and we were having a really good year. Then just unfortunately, COVID ended that, and the plan was to stay in college coaching. I'd actually been offered the graduate assistant job at Wingate, and originally accepted it, and then I ended up backing out. I felt bad for doing it, but it was the right thing to do. Just money situation and current things going on. It was just time to get out of the college game, but I knew I still wanted to coach, so um, I spent a season with the Dirtbags because I played for them and I was living in Greensboro. So, that summer, the COVID summer, I coached for them. And I believe I coached that fall as well. But when I moved back, that was whenever I made the decision to pursue my teaching license through the alternative routes. So I've been working on that for 3 years. Finally, my residency program is done with that. All I have left to do is pass the praxis, and I'll be fully licensed. So hopefully, I get that done this year. But yeah, so first year started out at Bunker Hill High School, and then after that first year was at Maiden last year for my first full year, and still back in Maiden. And, assistant varsity coach the outfielders, and I get to run all of the hitting as well. So in charge of what we do in VP in terms of hitting plans for the game, what approach we're going to take on certain guys. I keep spray charts, and for defensive stuff, I keep tallies for the offense, what guys are swinging at if they're having quality at bats, things of that nature, just to help our guys uh, be as successful as they can at the plate. And the good thing is, I'm surrounded by a good group of guys at Maiden. Surrounded by really good coaches, but then through the Athletes Lab connection, some of our players I actually knew from Athletes Lab before I got to Maiden High School. So I went into a place where I was already pretty comfortable with a lot of the guys on the team, and guys who were serious about playing baseball. So this past year at Maiden was a lot of fun. We had a really good team. I believe our record was 18-8 We finished second in the conference, and it was one of those seasons, so they had just come off of winning the conference by a long shot, and then last year we were projected to win the conference and sputtered at the beginning of the year. We actually dropped our first 3 conference games, and then we went on an absolute run. I think we may have only lost 1 game. We didn't lose another conference game into the last one of the year, and then I think we only lost 1 game in between there for the rest of the season. So we went on a pretty big run there. Gave ourselves a decent playoff spot. I think we were the 17 or 18 seed, something like that. Made it to the conference tournament championship game. Like I said, we really made sure that season took off. We played North Surrey first round playoffs. Our starter took a no-hitter into the 7th inning, beat them, played Moorhead, who was the 3 seed in the state at Moorhead. Really close game. Came down to they got 1 swing off. I think we ended up losing by 1 or 2 runs, but we had bases loaded in the 7th with our number 1 hitter at the plate, and he just missed a fastball. So we were 1 swing away from really taking down the number 3 seed. But really love being a Maiden. Plan on staying there until I retire from teaching. It's a really good community. Athletes Lab is 30 seconds up the road from the high school, so we have a state-of-the-art facility that we can use at any time, especially if there's any kind of bad weather or anything. And then some of our players play for the Lab, so we just mosey on over to the facility and get work in over there. So it's a really good setup having the high school and right there that close to the facility and being so close to all of that.
Yeah, you mentioned your background with the Dirtbags. Here a little less than 2 weeks ago at the Super Sophomore event over at Wake Forest, I actually sat and talked with Trey Daly for
Oh, really?
for the better part of a game, and good catching up with Trey, and
Oh, yeah.
We'll go ahead and mention here in the next few weeks, we'll definitely have Trey on the podcast to talk about a lot of those guys that he's familiar with that are joining the Pirate program.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's really cool. So we had a cool moment whenever the song, or was that fall, the first fall at ECU, they were having a dirtbag showcase, something going on at Clark LeClaire, and Trey had actually texted a bunch of us because we had like 10 dudes on the team who had played for the Dirtbags. Like that 18 and 19 team, like I want to say almost half of us played for the Dirtbags. So he had sent a group chat to all of us, and we actually he brought us out to the field after their game, and like 10 of us got to talk to the current Dirtbag players at that time. And then there's like a picture of all of us that we took of all the Dirtbag guys who were on the ECU team at the time. So that was pretty cool. Trey's the man. It's always fun being around Trey.
And at this point in that topic, as far as how many former Dirtbags have become Pirates, that came up, at some point during our conversation. He said, I think it's something like, between 60 and 65 now during Coach Godwin's decade.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, we started becoming a feeder program. Yeah, there for a while it was just dirtbag after dirtbag going to ECU, which worked out because had a lot of really good teammates. I mean, I know at one point, just to name a few, it was me, Washer, Turner. I think Brickhouse was a dirtbag. You had Bryson. There's some pitchers that I'm missing. There's a few other guys but the better part of the roster had played for the Dirtbags.
But and then final thing I had for you, that's what or actually next to the last question here. I know you're also a family man, right?
Oh yeah.
So tell Pirate Nation a little about your family.
Yeah, so married to my wife Kayla. She went to the enemy school of Campbell University. That was I give her flack about that all the time, but I also make sure to always remind her that we knocked her Camels out of the 2019 regional. Those are always fun conversations, and it's funny because she could give a rip about sports. She's a classically trained pianist, so like she doesn't care. We just get a good laugh out of it. So yeah, she has I'll butcher the name of the degree, but she pretty much has a degree, a bachelor degree in piano performance from Campbell, and then a master's degree in piano performance from UNC Greensboro. And she runs her own piano studio here because we live in Denver, actually about 10 minutes from East Lincoln High School. So over here in Alec Burleson territory, and she runs her studio here, is doing really really well. Doing lot of really cool things with that. I know she was invited to work at camp at UNCG for their massive music program. She worked at, she plays some concerts for some other people, but doing really really well with her business. We don't have any kids, but we do have a dog, so the dog keeps us busy. But and then if I'm not here, I'm usually out on the field with my brother. Yeah, I spend probably 3 or 4 days a week working working with my brother. And if I'm not working with him, we're usually just we're either eat, we're me, him, my mom and dad are either eating out together, or my wife will be with us. But we spend a lot of time together. Yeah, we're really close. We are really close as a family. Like, I know most Sundays after church, because we don't go to the same church, but we go close enough to where we can meet in the middle to eat lunch. Pretty much every Sunday after church, we meet at like an East Coast Wings in Hickory, and eat together and spend time. So yeah, very appreciative of my family who raised me and my brother, and then of course appreciative of my wife as well.
And then final thing I had for you, I meant to ask you this, kind of in the beginning of the interview, kind of growing up, you know, who was your favorite MLB player or some of your favorite players, and then favorite team?
Yeah, so diehard New York Yankee fan. I've faded away from the MLB in the last few years, just for whatever reason. I don't think there really is a reason. I just like to watch college baseball really more than anything. But yeah, as a kid, and so grew up a massive Yankee fan. My dad was a Yankees fan. My dad was born in New Jersey, grew up down here, but was born in New Jersey. So a lot of that side of his family is either from Jersey or New York. So they're all like Yankee fans. And fortunately, the first team I played on, Boger City Yankees, a T-ball team. Uh, so just fell in love with the Yankees there. Like the amount of like rare Yankee memorabilia that my grandmother would buy me. Like it'd be like they make like 1 in 100, and like that's what I would get for Christmas. They were really cool. They were really cool gifts because they were so unique. But just like my room was flooded with New York Yankee stuff. Um, like I was a Braves fan, at that age too, because they were just close, and I knew like we could get in the car and go watch them. I don't pull for the Braves now, but at that time, as a kid, you kind of pull for anyone you can see or anybody that a player like one of your favorite guys plays for. As for the Yankees, though, which I mean, like I'm not gonna say Derek Jeter. Like, yeah, I love Jeter. Believe it or not, my favorite player is Andy Pettitte. Yeah, Andy Pettitte was my favorite player for the Yankees. Mainly just that dude. Anytime the bright lights were on him, would just compete. You look at his playoff win record, right? Like, just went out there and just anytime he was in a big playoff game, he would shove. Um, then, like I remember in high school, his last their last big hoorah they had before he retired. A lot of the guys on the team knew how big of a Pettitte fan, and they're like, he's going to get lit up tonight. And he just cruises like 7 innings in his like last outing ever. And I forgot who they were playing, and just absolutely shoved. So just, I think it was a lot of his competitiveness and me being left-handed as well. Just always stood out to me. A huge Andy Pettitte fan. And of course, like, there's other guys that I was a big fan. I was a huge Chipper Jones fan. Like, I had 3 posters in my room growing up. One was a Jeter poster, one was a Chipper poster, and then a Barry Bonds poster. So I'm more of a fan of players, but if I have to classify, I would say I'm a New York Yankee fan. Although I haven't watched a Yankee game in maybe like 4 years.
Now, have you ever had a chance to go to the old or the new Yankee Stadium?
No, so
No.
I've been to New York, but it was only to Cooperstown. So I've never been to the city. My wife loves New York City, and we've made a deal that she said that if I agree to go to New York City with her, she will make sure I get to go to a Yankee game. So that was the deal we made.
Yeah, my son and I, we have a friend in Connecticut, halfway between New York City and in Boston. So last summer, we had the chance to go to a Yankees game against the Cubs, and
Oh,
then
that's cool.
a Red Sox game the next day against the Oakland A's. And
Oh, wow.
I'd never been to either one of those parks. And unfortunately, of course, several years ago, the old Yankee Stadium, was torn down, but
Yeah.
we walked by the location to catch the train after the game, and it's
Oh,
pretty crazy thinking, all the history that's now just a wrecked softball field.
yeah, I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
And but Chandler, really appreciate the time. Certainly didn't intend on going this long, with
No,
the show
not a
tonight,
problem.
but you've been very generous, and we look forward to we'll have you back on sometime down the road.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I want to say, because do you mind if I say one last thing?
Sure. Say what. The floor is yours. Whatever you want to say.
Cool. Yeah. So ECU is for anyone listening. Like if you have a kid that's playing for Coach Godwin or Coach Palumbo, believe me, they are in good hands and they are in a position to be extremely successful once they graduate from baseball. There comes a time where the stats, none of that matters. Even the wins, at some point in time they don't matter either. It's just about what are you going to do in your life once you get done playing, whenever that may be, and what they have going on there allows every person that buys into that program to be successful. There's not a room that I don't walk into where I don't feel like I'm ahead of the person beside me, just because of the values that in the standard that Coach Godwin and Palumbo and Roselle and the whole staff really held us to. So if you like, it's very dear to my heart. And, um, I was, my career ended right there in 2019, but any chance that I get to just talk about my experience at ECU, I'm always quick to do it because I want people to know like how good the experience was, how much it means to me, and then of course just what it did for me in my personal life in terms of like how I was able to handle myself once I graduated and was on my own. There's no doubt that they put me in a position to succeed. And of course, like I said, it took me a few years to get to the teaching route, but it's definitely what I enjoy doing and love to do. And but in the process of having to go back through some residency school stuff to get to that point, there's like there's some adversity to face just because some of the assignments are very, very thorough and rigorous and pretty heavy assignments. But my experience at ECU just is like it didn't even phase me. Like, yeah, it's tough, but it'll be worth it in the end. And I just put my head down and type away. And like I said, I'm 3 years into teaching now and plan on doing it for the rest of my career. And a lot of just how I'm able to handle myself out in the real world has been aside from my family, has been thanks to Coach Godwin and Coach Palumbo and the rest of the staff there. So if anybody's listening that has somebody there or has had someone there, they're in a good place.
That's awesome to hear. I know that means a lot to Coach Godwin, Jeff Palumbo, and that staff. As well as all the diehard Pirate fans out there. Before we let you run, a couple more comments here. Betty Burleson chiming in again, saying the 2019
Oh
regionals,
yeah.
nothing like it. Great memories, awesome group of guys. Love keeping up with them. And then also another viewer that says, thanks, Chandler, as a Gaston County player, played with and against many great Lincoln County players, great baseball in that neck of the woods in North Carolina, and, played with a couple from Cloninger family legends.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a cool comment right there, especially mentioning the Clonigers. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm telling you, man.
Sorry, I thought I mispronounced that. Cloninger is not Cloninger. But
Oh, you're all good. Yeah, there's a lot of good baseball on this side, and like I said, I love the exposure that it's getting now. It's pretty cool.
yeah, no doubt. But again, appreciate the time, and we'll catch up with you down the road. We appreciate all you did for the Pirates.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Pirate Nation, that is Chandler Jenkins, and we appreciate his time tonight. Before we wrap up the show, we'll go ahead and we'll go through a very quick MLB report, and we talk about Alec Burleson. What a year Burley has had. You know, Burley currently hitting, and this is as of Wednesday, August the 14th, 274, 20 bombs, which ties the second most ever hit by an East Carolina player in Major League Baseball. You had Chad Tracy back in 2005, hit 27, so that's certainly still well within reach for Alec. And that 20 home run mark by Chad Tracy the following season in 2006 has obviously already been tied by Burley. And, again, 274, 20 bombs, 68 runs batted in. Also, you have Sean Armstrong who has pitched 6 games with the Cardinals since being traded from the Tampa Bay Rays. And during his 2 weeks in St. Louis, in those 6 games, he's worked 8 1/3, allowing 4 runs on 9 hits, 9 strikeouts, and 2 walks. Jeff Hoffman continues to be a pivotal piece for the Philadelphia Phillies. It'll be interesting to see at year's end, whether the Phillies, choose to retain Jeff, or for money reasons, perhaps he lands elsewhere. We shall see, but he's going to be a key piece as the Phillies look to bring home a world championship this year. You have Gavin Williams. Gavin will be on the mound tomorrow night as the Guardians will be in Milwaukee taking on the Brewers. Gavin is 2-4 with a 4.39 ERA. Pitched very well the last time out as they were in Minnesota taking on the Twins. And Gavin went 6 innings, allowing just 1 run on 4 hits, 3 strikeouts, and no walks for Gavin against Minnesota in his last start. Unfortunately, you see Gavin with that 2-4 record, and for the most part, with the exception of one of, or I guess not one of, it was his worst outing of his 9 or 10 starts this year since he came back from his injury. That was the only game which he got a lot of run support. But again, Gavin will be on the mound on Friday night for the Guardians as they take on the first place Milwaukee Brewers in Milwaukee. The Brewers have that 8.5 game lead in the National League Central, and then the Guardians are 4.5 games up in the AL Central race over the Minnesota Twins. You have Connor Norby. Connor Norby is, now with the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. He was traded a couple weeks ago from the Baltimore Orioles to the Miami Marlins, and then Miami the next day assigned him to AAA Jacksonville. Hit his first home run on Sunday night with the Jumbo Shrimp. And Connor now this year, these are his AAA numbers between his time with the Norfolk Tides and the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. Is hitting .292 with 17 bombs and 60 runs batted in. He's also stolen 13 bases, and if I'm not mistaken, has over 20 doubles. Carter Spivey with the Lake County Captains high A ball for the Guardians organization, 7-1 with a 3.46 ERA. Zach Agnos with AA Hartford, the Yard Goats, the AA affiliate of the Colorado Rockies. Zach, unbelievable season, 5-1, a 1.15 ERA, 39 innings pitched with 48 strikeouts. And then, some of the Actually, a couple more updates as far as guys that had played in previous seasons. Josh Moylan and Josh Gross from a season ago. Moylan and Gross are both with the Hudson Valley Renegades, the high A affiliate of the New York Yankees. Moylan hitting .254 in 315 plate appearances, 260 official ABs. But Josh with 7 bombs, 11 doubles, and 32 RBIs. Josh Groves recently got moved up to the Hudson Valley Renegades high A ball from low A with the Tampa Tarpons. Trey Benton, unfortunately, here within the last few weeks, saw his 2024 season come to an end as he was placed on initially the 7-day DL and now the 60-day DL or injured list. And you have Jacob Jenkins Cowart. JC so far is 8 for 35, hitting .229, 4 doubles for the Jupiter Hammerheads. He got off to a 5 for 15 start and has struggled of late, but I'm sure JC, will start a hot streak here soon. And then you have Carter Cunningham. Carter Cunningham is hitting .321 for the Dunedin Blue Jays. And the Dunedin Blue Jays, and with his time there with Dunedin, again .321, 9 for 28, and he has a home run. Is actually the inside the park variety, and it was a situation where he hit a ball to the left center gap and the outfielder thought it was wedged under where he could get a ground rule double, but it was not. And Carter ended up circling the bases for an inside the park home run. He also has 3 doubles. And then you have Ryan McChrystal. He got his first pro hit a few nights ago with the Daytona Tortugas. You have Trey Savage. Trey is probably not going to pitch this year. It remains to be seen, but that was the last I heard. But he was in Toronto recently at the Rogers Center after signing for nearly $4.2 million after going in the first round to the Blue Jays. Wyatt Lunsford Shinkman and Eric Ritchie, who went in the 16th and 19th rounds, respectively, to the Mariners and the Philadelphia Phillies, have not pitched in pro ball, according to my research. You have going back into the late 80s, a guy that I'm very familiar with because I've gotten to know him here in Rowan County, a longtime head coach at Carson High School, also West Rowan with the Falcons. Chris Cobble, former Pirate catcher from 1987 to 1989 under Gary Overton. He was a teammate of Tommy Eason and a lot of those guys we've had on the show. But Cobble here recently was inducted to the Rowan County Sports Hall of Fame. So congratulations to him. Heck of a career as a player. He was the player of the year in Rowan County, also the athlete of the year in Rowan County, and then won 411 games between his time at West Rowan and Carson. And here a couple years ago, stepped down and retired. And so definitely a great Pirate, and appreciate getting to know him through the years. And congrats to Chris Cobble on being inducted into the Rowan County Sports Hall of Fame. And then last but certainly not least, congrats to the Little League Softball World Series champs from Pitt County. The ladies took down Louisiana in a thriller. And, it was very exciting to see them, after the series was impacted by Tropical Storm Debbie. They were able to get those games in, at ECU's softball stadium, Max Joyner Family Stadium. So great seeing that packed ballpark on ESPN and the ladies from Pitt County bringing home the Little League Softball World Series championship. But that will do it for this edition of the show. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media, as you see there on the bottom of the screen for our viewers, at Jungle Tales Pod on X, Instagram, also YouTube. We can be found on Facebook. Tonight, we're just broadcasting live on YouTube, here in a little less than a month, and I guess probably the early part of September. We'll be able to broadcast live on Facebook as well. And then if you prefer the podcast form, where it's audio only, as you see, you can find us by searching Jungle Tales and ECU Baseball Podcast on Spotify. Everything is uploaded there on our YouTube channel. We also have other content, sights and sounds from games from this past season, games from years past, primarily, from the Coach Godwin era, but then, there are a few things there from the archives, back from the Keith LeClaire era at Harrington Field, that I know ECU baseball fans, if you have not seen them, would really enjoy, especially you younger Pirates who never got to see the jungle when it really was a jungle at old Harrington Field. But again, appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll talk to you soon, probably around this time next week on Jungle Tales and ECU Baseball Podcast. And as always, go Pirates.